Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this LinkedIn and YouTube live session. My name is Michel Bouman. I'm the territory channel manager for Modern Work in Microsoft in the Netherlands. We're going to be talking productivity score today. I'll introduce the expert in just a second. If you're watching already, please feel free to ask your questions in the comment section. This is a Q&A, so whenever you have a question, please ask and we'll try to answer as many as we can in the next, let's say, 30, 35, 40 minutes. Without any further ado, Mr. AJ Smith, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Yeah, so what is it that you do in Microsoft?
Yeah, so I am a product marketing manager in the Microsoft 365 marketing team, and my primary focus is Microsoft Productivity Score. In particular, there's two sides of the product. I cover what we call the people experiences side of it, but I can talk to the entire thing because I've been working on it for a while now. I've actually been working on it since basically the inception of it, like all the way from like how do you envision the product to being to actually releasing it to general availability at the end of October. So I've been on this long ride getting this thing available and making it that so that every organization out there who uses Microsoft 365 or Office 365 can actually start to measure and see how their productivity is going in their organization.
Yeah, tell us a bit about that journey because I think we initially talked about it first last year at Ignite. I think that was the
Yeah,
kind
so,
of like the first moment that we started giving some previews. So what was that
yeah.
journey like from then all the way up to now?
Yeah, so the first big public moment was Ignite last year. So it'd be almost about a year ago where we publicly announced the solution and that we were going to make a private preview of it available in December. So it was basically made available to organizations who were interested in it for almost about 11 months now. Before that, though, it was a lot of internal work of trying to figure out, what do we want to measure? Where do we get all the information from? Because obviously, when you start to think about productivity and what Microsoft can help you with, things like meetings and content collaboration and mobility, and of course, like what does your networking connectivity look like to the services, and what do your endpoints look like when they're managed with
Mm.
Intune, and how long do they take to boot up? Like there's a lot of information out there that we can kind of bring to the forefront to help organizations better understand what's going on in the organization so they can drive productivity. So it's a lot of the data gathering and how do we bring it all together, and what do we think are useful insights that we want to provide. So that took a really long time, and then we kind of got to the preview phase. So we started getting more feedback, and then of course, as time progressed, we added in more functionality and everything, and then we made it generally available.
I think you just got your first compliment of the session already from Stala. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I love the way it gets presented to the administrators. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
we had to make a conscious choice of where do we put it, and we did put it inside the admin center. But we also know that not everyone has access to the admin center. The product is obviously aimed at people in IT, but also digital transformation leaders, people who are
mhm.
responsible for moving that digital transformation forward in the organization. And sometimes they don't always have access to the admin center, so there's other rules, permissions that you can give people in the admin center so they can just see productivity score, but they don't have the ability to change user passwords or things like that. So
Right, right. Maybe you can show a bit of what it is to people that are not in the know, just to give them a brief idea, and
yeah,
then we can move into Q&A.
absolutely. So let's just do a little bit of slides here. So let's start with a little bit of context around why we built it. As I said, I've been working on this for a while now, and when we were talking with organizations about their use of Microsoft 365 and how they were collaborating and everything else, obviously over the past few years, we've seen things dramatically change. Pre, pandemic and everything else, though, like we were seeing a lot of organizations talking to us about, hey, people were, communicating in different ways. They were part of a lot more virtual teams because obviously, like, people need to, are matrixed and work across different groups and everything like that. And then we also found, of course, that people need to be able to work anywhere and anytime. And then if we look at the beginning of this year, obviously none of us would have predicted how things were going to turn out and how much life and work were going to change. And it became even more important that organizations had a better idea of how their organizations was actually working. And we really have to tip our hat to the IT pros and the digital transformation leaders out there who, did that switch to, working in the office to remote work. And sometimes we saw that happen in little as like 2 months doing 2 years of transformation. So it was a
Yeah.
huge amount of transformation. And I mean, really, like, those, digital transformation leaders and those IT pros, like we really have to tip their hat to them. What we've also found over the past few months is that a lot of those things that have taken place over the, during the pandemic are going to kind of stay. Like, some of the things that they've
Mhm.
implemented aren't just going to disappear when people start to go back to the office. Some of those things are actually going to stick around for a while. Now, we also found in talking to organizations, even before the pandemic and this transition to remote work, that a lot of people were very interested in understanding the value they got from Microsoft 365. And when we always ask, like, well, how do you define value? The only thing
Mhm.
that they usually came back with was, well, I use usage as a proxy for value. It's not a great proxy, but it's all I have. And they were like, I wish Microsoft would give us something better. So with those two things in mind, we kind of thought about, how do we build a solution to help organizations better understand how the organization's working, and how do they get the most bang for their euro, buck, whatever it is, so that
Right.
they can feel good about their purchase and say, yeah, we're actually moving the needle in that transformation effort. So that's how productivity score came to fruition, of understanding like what we call the people experience side of like how people are working, and how the
Mhm.
technology you have influences productivity so that people can do their best work and get to the business goals that you have.
Mhm.
So if I had to boil down productivity score in a nutshell, it's really about providing insights that transform how work gets done. And we do that by really focusing on three things. The first is just visibility. We want to help you understand how your organization works. And we do that by focusing on two areas. We call the people experiences, which is things like, how are people meeting? How are they collaborating on content? How they're communicating? How they're working in teams, and not the product teams per se, but like in logical groups of people that come together to reach a business goal. And then how mobile are they? Can they work from anywhere at any time? And then the opposite side of this coin is the technology piece, because you could be great at content collaboration, but if your network connectivity is so bad that it takes you 5 minutes to open a file from OneDrive, those content collaboration skills aren't going to be any good to you because you're never going to use them. So we want to help you
Right.
understand both sides of that coin, because the technology definitely has a huge impact on the people experiences and how you actually are able to meet and collaborate. Now, of course, once we give people visibility into their actual organization and how people are working, the next thing we usually get asked is, well, can you give me some recommendations? Can you give me some insights
Mhm.
so that I can enable or so I can identify where these improved experiences are and what can I actually do? And one of my favorites, and one of the favorites that I usually hear from many organizations, is the ability to understand when people share content over email, are they doing an attachment or are they doing a link to a cloud document? Because effectively they do the exact same thing. They're sharing content. But when I share that link, I get that one version of the truth, that one document that's like everyone can go into, comment, make changes and everything, versus getting like 6 copies of the document back where then I have to manually merge these changes and then deal with the conflicts. If I do that link, it's all done in the cloud. Everyone sees what's going
Yeah.
on, and you can have that conversation there to build that document faster and get to that business goal. And then, of course, once you give people recommendations, they usually say, well, help me take action, help me move the needle, help me update skills and systems so that everyone can do their best work. So in productivity score, we think about how do we do that through training content and videos for end users, and then also documentation for IT pros so that they can enable features and functionality that can help people be more productive. And then of
Mhm.
course, once you
We have
give them
a
the actions, they of course you got to measure it, and that's where you get the visibility again. So it's cyclical.
Right. Okay. Get it. We have a question on both the insight and the actions. Again, from Stella. He started this with a compliment, and now he's asking the right question. So, thanks so much for the contribution. Compliance score and secure score does have list of actions which we can export and create a workflow to improve on. Are you planning to make exportable actions?
So I guess when you say exportable actions, are you asking about like, can you take the information out of productivity score and better understand what's going on in another system, or are you actually like, give me a bit more context around what you're looking for, because I can export data in some ways, but I guess give me a little more context here, so I can better understand what you're looking to do there.
Yeah. Let's give him a second
Yeah, to
to give that
respond.
context. As you,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yes, the actions. Can you export them to CSV?
So what you can do is you can export some of the data out to CSV. When I get into the demo, I'll show you where that is, but you can export the user level details out to CSV if you want, and then store them in another system, or if you want to just spin the data to better understand, like, is marketing doing something differently than sales or manufacturing, or is company X in your organization working differently than company Y, or region X versus region Y? Yeah, we can give you that. In the long run, one thing that we do want to do is provide an API so you can programmatically take the data out and then stick it somewhere else too. So it's one of those things
Right.
that we are working on. It's a future item. I will say it's not going to happen in the next month or two or anything like that, but it's definitely something we've heard loud and clear that organizations do want.
Got that. Would it be connected to the graph or just a separate API?
It'll be a graph API.
Okay,
That is
perfect.
the plan right now. So you'd be able to use the API. The scenario we hear a lot of is I have an existing dashboard that I use to measure my productivity or my adoption or whatever it is in Power BI
Mhm.
or somewhere else, and I want to be able to include productivity score data in that thing, because we completely understand that not everyone is 100% Microsoft shop, where they do have other
Mhm.
systems that they need to have data from. So they want to just take this data, merge it with others, and then be able to have that dashboard or that one pane of glass view to see everything.
Yep, makes sense.
So, all right. So with that, I thought we'll just do a very quick demo so that we can show people what it looks like if they're not super familiar with it. So let me just jump out here and we will go into the demo here. So for those of you who haven't seen Productivity Score, this is what it looks like. You go into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. On the left navigation, you go into Reports, and you'll see a section for Productivity Score. And this is roughly what you will see. Most people, first thing they're going to look at is what is my score? So you go to the upper right, and you can see what your score is here. It's 58% in this environment I have. And it tells me my numerator and denominator. So this is how I get my points. The denominator here is 800 points because every category of productivity score that you have access to is worth 100. We don't play favorites.
Mm.
We don't know if meetings is more important than content collaboration, than communications, or whatever in your organization. So we try to take a very neutral stance here and equally weight everything. Because again, in some organizations, let's say content collaboration may not be as high as, or as important as communication or something else. Like in manufacturing customers, maybe they have a lot of frontline workers who are, maybe assembling vehicles or whatever it is. They probably don't do a lot of content collaboration. So we didn't want to weight one thing more than another. And we also try to say that, like, your score is your score. We don't tell you if your score is good or bad. Your score is what you make of it. And you decide what's a good score for your organization. Because again, a manufacturing customer and content collaboration is not something that we do because we have a lot of people who are on that front line that don't do that. That's okay.
Right.
And if your score there is, I'll make up some number here, 30 points, hey, if you're happy with that, great. Focus on the things that you want to drive.
I
Now,
like that. I
underneath your,
like that approach. It's
yeah,
always something that I wondered about security score. Right. So where
yeah.
does that number come from, and how does it add up to a certain total points? I never really understood that ultimate goal. I like the approach that we took here. Everything is worth the same, and you
Mhm.
determine what is good or what is bad.
Yeah, I mean, secure score is a little different, and I could talk to this because before I took over productivity score, I was the secure score product manager.
Oh,
Our vision there was to help you better mitigate risk, right? So, and we know that certain controls help you mitigate risk more, like enabling MFA for admins mitigates a
makes
lot of
sense.
risk because they have the keys to the
Yeah.
castle. So that was worth more points. So there was a lot of work that we did to help organizations better understand what are those controls that we thought were more effective in mitigating risk versus ones that
Mhm.
were, nice to have that you could do it and mitigated some. So there was a bit of our opinion and what we found through research that weighted those metrics in secure score versus in productivity
Hmm.
score. I don't think we as Microsoft can make that decision of like what is more important to every organization. So again,
Yeah.
we're trying to take that neutral stance. Now, one thing we do give you, though, that many organizations do that have asked us for is a benchmark. And this is where you could better understand how you compare with your peers. So in this horizontal bar graph here, you're going to see this, you see this little triangle, and you'll find these triangles or these gray lines throughout productivity score. And this is how you compare with organizations that are similar to you based on things like the industry that you're part of, the region that you're in, the number of licenses you actually have. And there's a few other factors that we factor in as part of making this cohort of organizations that we give you as a peer benchmark. So this is a way for you to better understand: am I above my peers? Am I below my peers? Am I kind of in line? And again, do with it as you wish. Again, we're not trying to make that judgment call, but it's one of those things that we got feedback on of like, help me understand how I compared because I think I'm doing the right stuff, but
Hmm.
it's good to have that, that ability to baseline myself against other organizations that are like me. Then down here, I can see my score components. So I can see my people experiences and my technology experiences and where I'm getting my points. And then again, those peer benchmarks. And then I can also learn more about how my score is calculated. So in this environment, you're seeing a button. In the real environment that if you were to go into, you'd see a link that kind of gave you access to this. The button is something that we're working on right now. But here I can get into a bit more detail around, how many points am I getting from content collaboration or teamwork, or how am I getting points from my endpoint analytics, and how do I compare to that peer benchmark? And then down here, of course, is my score history. How have I actually been progressing over the past 180 days? Right? Because a lot of organizations want to see how they've been going, so they can report back to leadership. Yes, we're moving the needle in this direction, and this is what it looks like over that past 180 days. Now, a lot of organizations, once
You
they
got an
kind of
interesting.
go for it.
Go ahead, AJ. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I see.
Oh no,
I
we had
just looked
an
down now.
interesting comment from Alexander, and he said NHR. I'm not sure what he was relating to, but that it also opens up a whole new conversation with the HR teams, doesn't it? So not
It
just
does.
IT.
So yeah, the groups that use productivity score vary from organization to organization. Sometimes we see HR looking at this. Sometimes we see like the corporate communications team also needing to look at this because of the training aspect of like how do we help communicate the upskilling piece of this to end users and things like that. So there's a lot of different organizations that could potentially use it, but it varies from org to org. Usually larger orgs have like a digital transformation team or an adoption team that kind of looks at this. Smaller
Mhm.
organizations, sometimes HR is the one that's on the hook for kind of looking at some of this stuff. So yeah, it can vary. And that's why in the admin center, when we think about having it there's those additional roles that you can use to grant permissions to people. So productivity score, you need to have at least the reports reader role. So if you want to give someone in HR access to this, give them the
Mhm.
reports reader role, and they'll be able to get into productivity score and some of the usage reporting, but they won't have access to change people's passwords or look at billing details or anything like that. So I would say that's probably like the best role to hand out to people who need access to just this information.
Interesting. Yeah, and Alexander is clarifying it's not only IT, facility management and
Mhm.
workspaces, and he's absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many different groups that would be interested in this. So
Yep.
all right. In the main part of the page, this is where a lot of people are going to look and say, "Hey, look, what do I want to dive into? What do I want to move the needle on?" Now, we don't want people to try to go boil the ocean here. Look at all the areas, look at all the categories here, and like communications and meetings and everything else, and figure out what you want to tackle. Tackle one thing at a time. In the interest of time, I won't go through every single category, but let's just look at content collaboration. In this card here, you can better understand which percentage of people in the organization collaborate with files online. If I click into it, I get a bit more detail. So the thing that we actually score, the thing that gives you points, is what we're measuring right here. We're basically saying which percentage or how many people in your org are reading content in the cloud, creating content in the cloud, and collaborating with content in the cloud. And then we give you those peer benchmarks across all three of those areas. And to the right of that, we help you see how that's been trending again over that past 180 days. Now, one big question we usually get from organizations is, why do I care about this? What's in it for me? And that's where we kind of start to help you understand up at the top here. We have some research and some evidence that kind of backs us up and says that when people collaborate with online
Mm.
files, they can save up to 100 minutes per week. And then we give you a link to the evidence so that an organization can look at it and make sure that it's actually valid for them. Now, once you kind of look at this piece, the next step is like, well, you got to give me some additional insights, like what else is there to this? And that's why we give you this information around how your org actually collaborates. This helps you explore how that's done. So these things here don't contribute directly to your score, but as we go through these, you'll understand these indirectly affect your score. So for example, the first thing that we help you understand is, are people saving files online to SharePoint and OneDrive, right? Because to do any collaboration, you've got to save the documents to the cloud, right? So if people are sharing or saving files to SharePoint and OneDrive, they're going to be creators of content. That means that's going to impact your score, and it's also going to
Mhm.
enable people to be able to read and collaborate on content in the cloud. The second one, this is the example I gave you earlier of email attachments versus links to documents. What does the organization look like? Are a lot of people doing the attachments, or are they doing those links? Because again, it's a great way to share content and a great way to get people to collaborate on content in the cloud. Next to that, of course, is, are people sharing content externally, or are they doing internal only? So this is a great measure of like, are you able to use things like SharePoint's external sharing settings so that you can share content with people outside the organization? And then last but not least here in this row is the depth of collaboration. How many files are people collaborating on over a 28-day window? So everything you see here is done in a 28-day view, because we completely understand that not everybody's going to create a document every single day, or collaborate on a document every single day, or share content externally every single day. So we do it over a 28-day view to help you understand what's going on and kind of even things out, especially on, like, obviously weekends. People aren't going to be doing a lot of this stuff, so that's why we do it over that 28-day window. And then down
We have
below
a question.
here,
Yep.
oh yeah, go, yeah. How
Yeah,
far
so we
can you
have a
look
question
back?
about
Yeah.
how far can you look back?
Yeah, so we keep 180 days of the historical data of, like, the trending and everything, so that you see up here. But here in this, the explore how your org collaborates, like, this is over that 28-day window. So if you wanted to keep this data, that's where that export to CSV is going to come in. And I'll show you that in a second, where that you can take the user level
Mhm.
details and pull that out, and then hold on to that as long as you wish.
Hmm. Something that relates to this is this real time data, and is there an AI automated service that understands behavior, notifies users, departments, how they can improve things without having it to do it manual through people?
Yeah, so I guess there's two questions there. The real-time data one, let's start with that one. So this is not like real-time, like instantaneous, that if I uploaded a file to OneDrive, that number might go up because maybe I hadn't done it in the past 28 days. What we do is we pull the data periodically. We try to update it every single day, but there is some latency in the service where we have to get all the services to report all the data, and then we bring it all together. Because if we don't wait for all the services, let's say for some reason, I'll make up something, that maybe Yammer has a processing problem and their information's like maybe a half a day behind or something like that. Well, we got to make sure all of it's together so we can give you that accurate view of the day. So there is some latency that's built into the service, but we try to get you the data as quickly as we can so that you can start to understand what's going on. For the question around, is there an AI automated service that can understand the behavior and send notifications? There's nothing today that does that, because partly we want you to be able to say, who do you want to target? Because I'm not sure if you'd want to be able to say, let a system target particular people based on what they're doing, because maybe the AI is not going to be smart enough to say, ignore my executives. Like, I don't know if I want to send my CEO a message that says, did you know that you could use links instead of attachments in email messages? You probably want to focus that list a little bit and exclude people. So we give you that control, obviously, today on your own when you start to look at, so let me just show you where. So for example, some of the content we give you is here, and we let you decide who do you want to send that to and everything else. One thing in the long run we would like to do is to make this a little bit easier for you so that you can target particular groups, exclude certain groups, and send this information to them, or even potentially use what we call the business bar in the products themselves. So one thing we're thinking about is, could you, like, let's say, for example, let's use the email attachment one. If someone's going to click the attachment button in Outlook, could we pop up a bar when they do that and say, hey, did you know that you could send a link instead? And there's some benefits. Click here to learn more. If we could do that, that might influence the behavior a bit to help you kind of move that needle in a way that's not just an email message or something that you'd maybe bake into your training for your new employees or whatever. So there's a bunch of things that we're looking to do, but that's one that we think has a lot of potential to help you kind of move that digital transformation needle.
Yeah, that's what I like about what's happening in my analytics, right? So if you send an email late at night, you get the notification saying, "Hey, you might want to consider sending this out in the morning." So there's
Yeah, it's one of
these
those things
little
that
nudges that you get.
Mhm. Absolutely. The nudges are like, that's the same concept for productivity that we're looking at, of like, how do I nudge you in the right direction to help you kind of think of a different way of working that might help you, kind of get to the end result faster, whatever that end result is.
Mm, yep.
Yep. All right. Also, one thing in content collaboration, which I think is really cool, is we start to help you understand that technology experience piece. Like, how does it influence, or how could it influence, the people experiences? So here you get a quick card that says which percentage of your devices have, great connectivity versus not so great connectivity to SharePoint and OneDrive. So here you can see I've got about 9% of my devices that fall in the bottom bucket, and the next one up is another 40%. So in the basically in the bottom two groups, I've got almost half my organization here, which may make me think, do I have a problem with connectivity? And that's going to be an inhibitor to actually moving the needle in these other things. So we want to at least, again, show you both sides of that coin so you can see what's going on, and make that call of, do I need to go talk to my networking team to understand what's going on the network, so that maybe we can solve some of those problems to make it easier for people to collaborate in the cloud. And then down at the bottom here is where we give you the people details, like how does an individual stack up. So for example, here I can see like Anton, I can see the country information. So we do pull a bit of data from Azure AD, which is country. Then we pull in department, and then we pull in company, because we know that some organizations have multiple companies in a single tenant. And then you can use that data to export all this out and then spin it and say, is marketing doing something differently than sales, or is the US doing something differently than the Netherlands, or whatever else. So we give you a way to help you kind of better understand how your organizational data, could be used to, look at this information so that you could better make a call of how it's productivity across different groups or different sets of people. And then of course, we give you this view of, how people have been working over the past 28 days. So I can't see if Michelle has had a phone call at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. Like, we don't give you that level of detail. All this is done over that 28-day window. So you can see here, how many days was Anton a reader out of the past 28 days? Like, so Anton read, he had read documents 14 out of those 28 days. How many days was he a creator? How many files were there collaborated on? So again, it's at a very abstract level, because this is not meant to be a monitoring service. We don't want this to be used as monitoring of employees. That's a really bad idea. So it's one of those things that we definitely want to make sure that we don't have people use the solution in that way at all. And part of the reason is that we use that 28-day window to help kind of provide that privacy. Now we completely get. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we have two. I'm sorry that I keep
You're
interrupting
good.
you.
Yeah, that's it. Go for it.
So we have a question from Dan, which is a typical Dutch name, by the way. And you just answered it. Is it possible to zoom in or report down to user level? I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
But then also, when you talk about usage and analytics, there's a question coming in from Terrence saying, in terms of added value, what's the added value of productivity score compared to usage and analytics?
Yeah, so the value here, I would say, if you're looking at like usage reporting or usage analytics, that is done at a very high level. Are people using Exchange or not? Is, like, as a prime example, or the number of meetings that people are having, versus are you people using attachments versus links in email messages, right? Which I think is a better way to help people understand, are there different ways of working that can move that needle? So I think usage reporting is very good for people who want to get started in understanding, are people using the product that they've actually deployed? But then when you want to get into, how do I help people work in new ways that help them get to the business goals that they have, something like productivity score is a great way to use, or is something great to use to help you better understand that. So I think it's a bit more granular in how we are measuring, quote, usage, because yes, I mean, usage of an attachment versus a link is effectively usage data. But I think it's more impactful to understand some of those feature functionality benefits that we think could move that needle to help you digitally transform or upskill people so that they can really get to the core of what their job is, right? Move that, get to that business goal, right? Because nobody creates a Word document to create a Word document. They're doing it to communicate an idea or get feedback on something and things like that. So,
okay, good stuff.
Yep. I know that. So also the user level details question around GDPR and stuff. We completely get that there is privacy concerns around some of this. So there are some additional controls that you can use to increase the privacy if you choose to do so. So one option is that you can remove the names. You can take the names away and make them random numbers and letters. So you wouldn't see, Anton's name here. You would just see bunches, ones and zeros and letters and numbers and stuff like that. So you could abstract it that way, but the Azure AD metadata would still exist. So it's another way that you can still get the access to the data and say, well, is it marketing versus sales? But I don't know if it's Anton or Bryce or Don or whoever else. Another thing we can do is that there's another role that we've added into Azure AD called the Usage Summary Reports Reader role. This is a brand new role that we created just for Productivity Score, which basically takes away the entire table. So if you don't want people to see the table and just show them the organizational view of this, you can. So maybe there's some people where you only want them to see this piece. Great, you can give those people that new role, and they won't see the table at all.
There's a question on the roles from Alexander from a little bit earlier. I was saving it for the end, but can you also RBAC, so role based, writes this somehow to users or external partners?
Yes. So the two big roles, that reports reader role and the usage summary reports reader role, are the two that I would look at. For people outside of the organization, obviously, if you have delegated admin rights or something else, then obviously you'll be able to pull that data. But you would need to have permissions to the tenant in some way to actually get to the data. There's no way that a partner who has no permissions to the tenant would be able to pull any of that data. So
Right. Okay, we have some more, but could please
yeah.
continue.
Yep. So all right, so that's just the people experiences side of this. Let's talk a little bit about the technology side here. Let's just do networking because I've already talked a little bit about it. So this gives you a very high-level view of how network connectivity is going on in the organization. So I can see my current score here, and I can see how I'm getting my points because network connectivity measures three things: your latency to Exchange, your throughput to SharePoint, and then in Teams, it's looking at things like UDP packet loss and jitter and things like that because those are really critical to having a great meeting experience. In the main part of the page, I can see my office locations and what my connectivity looks like there. And then I get some recommended actions and further research that I can do across my organization. And then, of course, I have my history again over that past 6 months. Now I can drill into particular areas. So let's say for Philadelphia in the United States, I can drill in and see why that dot was red. Well, one of the reasons is, as you can kind of see in the map, I'm backhauling all my traffic from Philadelphia to the Seattle area and then connecting to the front door of the service versus connecting, on the eastern side of the United States. So if I scroll down here, I can definitely see some of my recommended actions like, well, you're backhauling, network traffic. You've got some SSL inspection. You've got some impact from proxy servers. So we're helping you better understand why you have any connectivity issues, or this is a good way to better help you understand what actions that you could take. And then, of course, there's areas of research that you could also do. Now, one big question we usually get from organizations is saying, well, how do I know it's on my end? Could it be the infrastructure of the location that I'm at? So in this case, Philadelphia. And obviously you can see I've got a score of 18 here, so it's pretty low. And that puts me in the bottom group here. And that's what this chart is to help you understand. I'm here. There's 23% of other organizations in the same group, which means that there's 77% of people who have a better score than I do, which tells me that it's likely a problem on my end, less on the infrastructure side of the location that I'm in. So this is just, again, one side of the coin of like that network connectivity can influence a lot of different things. And how do you better understand what's going on there so that you can then, if you're a digital transformation leader or an HR or whoever you are, you might be able to go to the networking team and go, why are we doing this? Is there a particular reason why? Like help us understand this, because we think that we could give a better experience to end users around Microsoft 365 if we were to be able to connect to a front door much closer to where the users actually are.
Yeah, Philly in this case. Yeah.
Yep. So that's productivity score in a super high level view. I know I've talked a lot, and I know you've got questions, Michelle. So let's kind of jump into some of those questions quick.
Yeah, we have a few more. How would you
Good.
compare productivity score with workplace analytics? And then she adds an extra question: what insights are in common? What more can workplace analytics offer?
Yeah, so great question. We do get this a lot. So I think the best way to look at it is productivity scores helping you understand how Microsoft 365 can help you from a usage perspective, use certain solutions or certain features of the product to help you better understand how you can upskill people and help them be more productive so that they can effectively get to the business results that you care about. The workplace analytics solution and my analytics and in some ways also thinks about the behavioral side of this and also who's working with who. Is sales working with marketing? Is a really good example. You'll notice in here, like, we don't show you any of that. We don't tell you kind of like a network perspective of like, is sales meeting with marketing, or is sales, collaborating on content with marketing at all. So that's where I think workplace analytics has a really big benefit there to help you understand the interconnectivity and how people work together inside of the organization. So I would say it's kind of one of those key differences between those solutions. So I think the two solutions work very well together, and I would highly recommend using both of them if you want to see kind of see both sets of that information and help you understand, again, the behavioral side and the people networking side of it versus just also understanding how people are actually working and how they're getting their job done.
Cool. Question from Elvira. Is it possible to export the productivity score data to Power BI and design your own dashboards to show the customers?
Yeah, so the CSV export, so let me just jump back in here to like content collaboration. The button here for export your list would allow you to export this data out to CSV, then you could put that into Power BI. It would not give you some of the other data that's in these cards and everything, and that's where we're looking to be able to give you that API in the future, so that you could take data from the service and easily put it into another system like Power BI to build your own dashboards or to augment your existing dashboards.
Good stuff. I think that's the last question that we have. We have a little bit of a delay,
Mhm.
so let's give it a few
Yeah.
seconds. If anybody needs more information on
Mhm.
productivity score, where do they go to?
So there's a couple places you can go. First of all, if you just want to go check out Productivity Score, the easiest way to get there is aka.ms/productivity score. If you want to learn more, I have an entire webpage dedicated to just resources, and that's at aka.ms/prod score resources. So that's where you're going to find a bunch of videos, documentation, links to blog posts, and everything else. So I would say that's a good place to start your journey on learning more about Productivity Score.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you being on this stream with me today.
Yeah,
Maybe let's do it again in half a year if there's any new stuff coming to productivity score. Thanks
absolutely.
everybody for watching and the great questions that you've asked. If you're looking to watch more Q&As, you can always go to the YouTube channel. The link is right here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, AJ.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michelle.